Hey everyone, it's Simon Hurley from Ink Clips. I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Today marks the first day of my summer, so I'm super excited to create more content and exciting things coming soon. However, today I'm showing you guys how to create some cards using your dye ink pads and your colorful ink pads to create some really cool watercolor effects. Now I have to be honest, I was planning on making a bunch more cards, but I just created two really fun cards using the all new ink pads today. But I created this whole chart here of all the ink pads that I have to show you guys kind of some of the results I got. Now on the left hand side, I find these are the more water-based ink pads and they worked a little bit better to create some really smooth, vibrant color. And the ones on the right still created that cool color, except they had some little particles in them. And I think it's because they're waterproof inks, so they were a little bit harder to break down, but you can have different results. Let me know in the comments below your results and if you try it with your ink pads at home. So I'm using these paper layering dies from Hero Arts. This one creates a really awesome little koi fish, and it cuts out the actual designs which can pop up, which I think is super awesome, and it also cuts out the actual koi fish. So I'm taking both of the dies from the set. The inside piece, like I said, cuts out the pop-up portion, and the outside cuts out the actual koi fish. So if you don't include the outside, it just cuts out on the card without the actual fish coming out. So I've taped both these pieces together so I can have the whole fish come out of the surface, and I can run this through my die cutting machine. And then I'm going to use that outside portion for one card and the inside portion for a different card as well. So you can see once I pop this out the really awesome results it has, and then I'm going to pop all those little portions up after I'm finished watercoloring it. So for both of the cards today, I'm really focusing on the dye ink watercolor, and then I'll show you some techniques to create a really simple and fun background as well, and to kind of finish off these cards. So for the first card here, I'm just taking the all new ink pads, and I'm going to smush them right onto the stamp pocket here. With three different basic colors, I decided to just use three to show you guys you don't need a bunch of different colors. You can just use three and get really stunning effects from it as well. And then it's just as simple as taking some of that color with a water brush or a paintbrush with some water and start coloring right onto your fish. This is just watercolor paper. You'll notice it started with a really dark color, and that kind of fixes itself later on. Using the water brush kind of didn't give me a steady flow of water, so some of the colors can be pretty uneven in some places. However, you just kind of can go crazy with this technique and watercolor, and I'm going to show you a variation in a little bit here, but it's a really fun technique to kind of blend all the colors together and get more use out of your colored ink pads if you don't use them a ton. And if you guys are interested in buying some more watercolor ink pads and wanted to make sure that they'll work for this technique as well as stamping, I'll have that full kind of chart that I created over at my blog, and you guys can check to see which ones you like the most, and I'll link to a bunch of my favorite brands as well. And just kind of go crazy with this. I'm just adding the color where it will blend the most, and I find that the more water gives you more better effects. And I started out with less water, but then as I squeeze my water brush more, I get some more water, which helps blend the colors together better and give you a more smooth effect with your ink pads here. So after I'm done watercoloring and it's all dry, I'm just going to take this little pokey tool here, or whatever you guys have, and just kind of poke through some of these pieces so the tail comes out, the head kind of pops up as well, and as well as some of the fins, and then all of these little scales on its back pop up. So I'm just going in with that little craft knife, and I'm just kind of poking these up. And if you want to make sure that they stand, you can add some foam tape underneath the head and the tail, and maybe even some of the scales if you want to make those stand to kind of pop off your card a little bit more. And once I'm done poking out all the pieces, the results are awesome and they look so stunning on top of your card, and this die was thought out so perfectly. So after I'm done with that, I'm just adding a little bit of shimmer and shine with this Wink of Stella, and this is glitter that kind of doesn't come off, but I just wanted to give the fish a little extra something. And then for the background, I'm taking just this dark blue card base here, and I started off by just kind of using some water to paint on some of these lines here, as well as some of that color, and I'm just kind of painting across some little wave textures. Now usually I don't add in my mistakes, but once I finished this and it was all watercolored and I thought it was an awesome background, I started to heat set it, and all the lines started disappearing into my card base because they weren't really dark enough. You can really faintly see them, but it wasn't as much of a texture or like a background that I really wanted. So I just ended up taking the ink pad, and the nice thing about these Altenew pads is they are rounded edges instead of a harsh edge. So I really could just be able to take this ink pad without getting any super harsh edges and just come in to make this really fun wave texture. And you don't need a background stamp or anything, but it creates a really awesome background and some really cool texture and effects. So after everything's finished, I'm just adhering this fish on those little edges that you see because I didn't want to ruin any of that texture. So I'm just adhering them down on that little rim around the edge, and you can also add some foam tape, like I said, underneath the tail and the head to make sure it stands up. Then I'm using this awesome sentiment set from Hero Arts, which has some kind of wiseacre birthday sentiments, as well as just your regular happy birthday, which I'm using today. And I'm just using some Versamark ink, stamping that down in the corner right onto my card base here. And I'm going to heat set that with white embossing powder, which will give me a really nice crisp white sentiment on the outside of my card. And then on the inside, you can stamp one of those sentiments that are kind of more wiseacre-ish, that kind of crack a little bit of a joke. But I did that off camera later on, which creates a really fun sentiment for the inside of your card. And so I'm just heat setting this to make sure I get a really nice white sentiment, and then I'm complete and finished with this card. Alright, so for the next card here, I'm just taking that negative portion of the die cut that we cut earlier to create this fun background, and I'm just doing the same technique that we did with that watercolor, except I'm adding a little bit of a sparkly twist onto it to make it look like kind of maybe an ocean, I guess. And I'm just taking that Wink of Stella clear shimmer pen that we did, and we added it onto the fish, except now I'm just going to take it straight with that watercolor, and I'm just going to watercolor right onto the background using this Wink of Stella shimmer. Now the nice thing about this pen is it adds that shimmer without it coming off onto your hands, so once it's completely dry, none of that glitter will come off and it won't create a full mess in your craft room, which I'm always scared of. So this shimmer pen is really nice, and it creates that shimmer when you tilt it right into the light. So I'm not going to show too much of this card, but you guys kind of get the point here. I'm just doing the same thing, and it won't ruin the shimmer pen at all once you're finished with this. All you have to do is just make sure it's wiped off back to clear once you're finished, if you want to clean it right out, and none of it will stain or get at the inside of your pen like that, so it's perfectly completely fine to watercolor with this shimmer. If you don't have this, however, you could take some Perfect Pearls or shimmer powder, put it in some spray mist if you have that, and then spray it directly over top of your card once you're done watercoloring, and that'll just give it an all over shimmer and shine. It won't be as shiny, I guess, in the end, but it'll still give a really nice cool effect in the end once you're finished with your card background. So after I'm finished, I'm taking this gray card base here, and once again just kind of taking this ink pad. This is a square one here, so you get more harsh lines, and I'm just creating a fun texture in that background there. Instead of using a background stamp or anything like that, which you could do, I'm just really quickly rubbing that over top of it, adding some foam tape onto that background there so it stands up nicely off the card and gives some raised texture to it. And then I'm going to quickly take that, flip it over, and pop it right on top of that card base there. And then we're almost finished with the card. I'm just going to quickly stamp down a sentiment for this. I'm using a sentiment that is a little bit more wiseacre-ish, like I was saying, from that set, which says, age is just a number and yours is getting really high, which I think is just pretty funny. And I'm stamping that down in some black ink, and I'm going to cut that right out, right around that image, which I really enjoy doing around the sentiments, since there's not dies for them, but it creates a lot more versatile and doesn't have a nice big bulky border around it, so you can add it into smaller spaces. And I'm just going to pop that up on foam tape right inside of that little window where that fish is, and this just kind of fills in some of that space with the sentiment there, and it kind of pops it up right off the card so it stands out right in the center. So that completes that card as well. I added some shimmer into this background too, so that when you tilt the card you can see all the shimmer and shine, and I really loved the effects that we can get with these dye ink pads and the versatility of having them for stamping and also having them for watercolor and a bunch of other techniques in your cards. It's a really good thing to invest in, so I'll have a bunch linked below and over at my blog if you want to stop over there as well. If you guys loved this video, please give it a big thumbs up. There's more videos on screen if you want to see more of my card making content, and also if you click that little subscribe button on my icon there, you can get much more of my videos and you'll be notified every time I upload if you click that little bell down below. And then if you want to stop over at my blog as well, there will be much more pictures and info and also links over there to products and stuff that I used. Thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great day.